On March 4th of this year, 2020, when How the Heck Are We Gonna Get Along had its inaugural episode in person in Los Angeles in front of a live audience. Remember those things, in person and live audience? When we had our very first episode, our guests were John Iadarola of the Young Turks, Matthew Sheffield, and Blaze TV's Lauren Chen. The discussion ran the gamut from the topics of the day, the primary elections, to mainstream media and the role that media plays in our political discourse today. Very little agreement amongst our panel. In fact, the only thing that everyone agreed on was the fact that they all liked the movie The Invisible Man that they had just seen in the theaters in the past week. Well, remember that? Going to the theater and watching a movie? I'm not a fan of movies like The Invisible Man, but at this point, I'd be more than happy to go watch it if I could get out of the house and go to the theater. But for our final live interview of 2020, we've decided to ask back one of our very first guests, Lauren Chen, the host of Pseudo Intellectual with Lauren Chen on Blaze TV, to recap a little bit of 2020 and touch more on one of the biggest topics of our very first episode, the media, the role the media plays, the role that fake news plays, the role that social media plays in our political discourse, and how her opinions may have changed over the past year. Lauren Chen with Blaze TV. I'll ask her if the fraud claims are fake news, the importance of Twitter, the importance of Section 230, and how the heck are we going to get along? Are you in Toronto?
I'm in Montreal. So actually us in Toronto are kind of like the epicenters for Canada. So we've never really shut down. We've been pretty much shut down since like late March, April. But now we're going into a really heavy where only essential businesses are open because I don't know, the cases keep going up. I don't know what's happening.
Is it helping, do you think, there? I mean, Canada's definitely done better with this than America has, but are the shutdowns effective in controlling it there, or you don't think so?
I guess it's kind of hard on a province by province basis. So in Montreal, it's definitely a lot more populous than the prairie provinces. But for us, it's so strange. Like we've always been shut down. And it keeps getting worse. I saw Biden saying, we need like 100 days of masks. And it's like, we've had masks for months and months and months. Restaurants have been shut for almost the entire year. But we're still having, waves and waves of these cases. So I'm not a scientist, but I feel like maybe the efficacy, but we did open up schools. So I don't know. Is it the schools then? So,
God, right. So, but it could go either way, right? I mean, it could be that clearly shutdowns aren't working, or some people could make the argument that things may be getting worse, but imagine if we weren't shut down, how much worse it would be. I mean, what's the consensus there amongst folks in Quebec and the parts of Canada that you can, speak with people in?
There have been, the anti-lockdown protests like in many countries. And I think a lot of people are really hurting economically, especially, like I said, the restaurant business. Like they've essentially been closed for the better part of the year at this point. But I think what's been frustrating about Canada and, my dad actually, he got diagnosed with cancer this past year. So it hits close to home is that our shutdowns have affected our healthcare. So everything has been been put on the back burner. There are cancer screenings that aren't happening, medical surgeries that have been postponed. And that's really, really hard because I get that we need to protect people who are immunocompromised, but there are other health concerns aside from COVID. And right now, those people are really, really suffering. And I don't think it's, I get that hospitals are kind of where you would worry most for those people, but sending them home without healthcare is not the answer. But it seems like that's what our politicians have been doing.
What are the economic issues? I mean, obviously we see the same problem here in America when it comes to restaurants shutting and businesses, people going out of business, and some people having no sign of a job for a while. I mean, people who are in the music business or the live performance business like me, I'm not talking about myself, but anyone who tangentially is associated with that, whether you're an audio mixer or a lighting designer or a stagehand or you work in the ticket booth for a theater. I mean, those jobs are gone for the foreseeable future. What's Canada doing differently than the US when it comes to supporting those folks who are out of work?
Well, I think something that's really different, and this is kind of come to a head right now that the US has just passed another stimulus bill, is that Canada's stimulus has been a lot more targeted, right? We haven't had anything where the government just blanketly said checks for everybody. Any kind of COVID relief has been saved for people whose jobs have actually been specifically impacted by COVID. So there was it's called sort of Coronavirus Emergency Relief Benefit, or I think is what it stands for. And people can apply for it. And I think I forget what the exact payment is per month, but it's specifically if you haven't worked or if you've had your hours cut by this much due to the pandemic. So it's not everybody getting it. And we've also had specific small loans for businesses that have had their payroll affected, and part of those loans are forgivable if they're paid back in a certain amount of time. So and I don't think we've had, anything like the massive pork barrel stimulus that was just passed. So it's been more targeted, but I think it's also been a lot more uneven across the board. There are Canadian provinces that really haven't been hit hard by cases, unlike Ontario and Quebec. So I think overall it's been.
Is it easier to do that? Is it easier to target though when you're, a tenth the size? I think you're a little bit more than a tenth the size of the US. You got 40 million people, right?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's much easier. But at the same time, Canadians were already on the top almost for personal debt among other countries. Canadians are a very indebted people, unfortunately. And this situation has just made everything worse, especially for small business owners. So, the property prices around the Montreal area have been skyrocketing, and 2021 might be the first time that it actually dips, which might be great. You might be thinking that's good news if you're looking to buy, but when you realize
it's not if you're looking to sell.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
A lot of people, it's because they can no longer keep up with their payments. It's because they've lost their job and they're being forced out of their houses. So
how in the world did you get so interested in American politics? You clearly know what's going on in Canada, and there sounds like there's just as much interesting drama there. What got you so interested in American political systems and what's going on here?
So I'm kind of a third culture kid, I suppose. My parents, my mom's Canadian and my he's from Hong Kong, and they met in Canada, but I grew up overseas. So I grew up in Hong Kong, Singapore, Shanghai, London, and throughout my childhood, I was going to American schools. So my education is actually American, even though I am not American. And so I kind of grew up learning from American teachers a lot about American history. And then when I went to college in the US, in the States. And so I studied political science in America. So again, American political systems. I interned on the Hill when I was a student as well. And I've since worked with American nonprofits and things like that. So I guess it's really, it's strange. And people have asked me that, how come you know so much about American politics and why are you interested? But I guess, in a lot of ways, it's all I've known.
Is it just that, are younger generations now just more globalized in general? It's so much easier to communicate with people in any country online, where I didn't have that growing up. Is it a result of a generational thing? Do you think it's a good thing that we are more connected?
Generational. And, I think there are pros and cons in a lot of ways, but I think it's unavoidable at this point. And, on our show, we also talk about, what's happening in the UK. Sometimes we've done stories on France and in Australia. And I think what's interesting is that a lot of countries are having the same political problems, even though the specifics might be different. So I still think it's relevant to talk about, for example, free speech laws in the UK, even as a Canadian. And I think I would hope Americans are paying attention too, because these are the same basic core issues that kind of, I guess, you have to struggle with over what is the role of government. So I think it is, you can at least learn a lot from each other, if nothing else.
But it's interesting as we're talking about it, I'm thinking, yeah, but isn't one of the big core issues, points of contention, however you want to say it, in the UK right now, in many ways in America right now, certainly they're having the discussion in France and Germany as well, that there's a big contingent of each of those countries that is tired of the globalization. They don't want the UK voted to leave the EU because there's a big group of folks in the UK who want to be a little bit more isolationist. I don't know if that's the word or not, but there's certainly a nationalist thread going through the UK. A lot of Donald Trump's support came from this nationalist America first, sentiment amongst a bunch of people who felt they were left out. And it's kind of, I mean, it's funny. It's interesting to me that there are people who are younger who are very much against that in the UK and in the US, and who are, the younger generations are globalized. And if you look at the UK, you've got these younger generations who are appalled by the idea that the UK would want to isolate and would want to leave the EU. Is it a generational divide there? I mean, you are someone who kind of speaks to a lot of that audience yourself in your show and what your audience, but at the same time, you are almost in a way a product of the younger generation that has benefited from a certain degree of globalization and a ability to learn from different cultures. I mean, what's going on? Why is there such a generational divide there?
Well, I think the first thing I would say to that is that I believe there's a strong difference between something like globalization and globalism. So if we look at the economic concept of globalization, it speaks to things like free trade and increased connections with business and things, and I would say cultural as well. But if we look at the political scourge of globalism, if I could do a better Alex Jones voice, which unfortunately I can't.
Please don't.
That more refers to things like larger overarching government structures that a lot of people believe would remove power from individual citizens in places, let's say like the UK, and transfer it, in the case of the UK, over to unelected officials in Brussels. So that is something very different than saying, I want to hear about what's happening in this country. I think there's a lot that we can learn from their policies, etc. And also, hey, I appreciate the business aspect of being able to trade interconnectedly. There is a big difference there. And I'm someone I'm very nationalistic. I mean, I think Canadian government should be mainly focused on what's best for Canadian citizens. But at the same time, that doesn't mean closing yourself off from the world and not wanting to talk to anyone else. And, I know a lot of people who support Brexit, and it's not necessarily because they want to close themselves off. It's just because they want more control over what happens over their everyday lives, which I think is quite reasonable. And actually, if we look at what the UK negotiations for Brexit specifically have been like since that whole referendum happened, it seems like the people who are pro-Brexit are very willing to create new trade agreements and deals with places like the US, like Canada. So I wouldn't say that you're either for globalism and globalization and everything must be international or completely closed off. I think there is a little bit of mix and match that could happen.
Okay, well, let's help me out. So, because I wrote this down because I like that difference between globalization and globalism. What are the good things about it then? What are the bad things about it? What is it that you believe is a benefit of more interconnectedness, and what are the things that people who you talk to are worried about from it?
Sure. Well, I think in terms of business, let's talk about that specifically. Globalization in terms of business has been responsible for a big uptick in the standard of living in North America, what the average person in Canada or the US is able to buy, right? And that's just because Chinese can manufacture it cheaper. But on the flip side of that, and this is kind of where things might go too far, you've also had entire industries that have been kind of decimated by corporations packing up, leaving to go overseas. So it's definitely a double-edged sword. As a student of economics, you learn that when stuff like that happens, it's that the benefits are diffuse, but the negative consequences are always very pinpointed. And that's something that each individual country has to weigh the pros and cons of for themselves. Is it worth completely opening up and saying like, all right, let's flood the market with these cheaper goods, even though we lose these amount of jobs? Is it the right thing to do to maybe put some tariffs in place so that prices do drop, but not all jobs are just completely wiped from the face of the earth when it comes to American manufacturing. That is hard, and that's something that I know the US has been struggling with, as has pretty much every other industrialized country. Another thing, if I can talk to the cultural and political aspect of it, is I think that and this is especially true for media, the presence of like Western media in non-Western countries, I think, has been a huge part of younger generations in places like, let's say, Hong Kong or the Middle East, wanting to embrace more Western style liberal democracies. That is absolutely an export that the West has given to these other countries. And I think that is a good thing. And, there are, like, one of the examples in my own life is the concept of free speech. Growing up in Hong Kong, and then I've lived in China and even Canada, we don't really have the concept of the Second Amendment like Americans do. But I am so glad that through my upbringing, I've been able to appreciate that, because I really do think that's one of the most important rights as humans we have. And even though it may not be recognized by other countries, I think it is innate to us as human beings.
What's the downside on that? Because we're doing two sides of the coin. The media and the spread of democracy and those Western ideals, so to speak, to places like, arguably how we saw the Arab Spring. I think people might use that as an example. But what's the downside of that?
Well, I guess the downside of that is that, hey, if good ideologies spread really fast, then negative ones must as well, right?
Have we seen that?
Well, we have seen it's kind of calmed down, lately, but for a while there was this big surge in global terrorism. We have had Western citizens, I know definitely from Canada, and I think from European countries as well, be radicalized online, travel to places like Syria. We've also had people like the Charlottesville shooter? I'm forgetting. Christchurch shooter, again, right, radicalized online. So yeah, in that case, it is a double-edged sword. Good ideas spread, so do bad ones. And I think it's kind of unavoidable to an extent, and hopefully the good ones win out. But it's something we've also seen.
So to your first example, business, the standard of living going up, and how the downside of that is often that some jobs go away. And you talked a little bit about trying to balance that and find that balance, and how that has certainly been a challenge for everyone. You talk a bunch about media and the media's role in a lot of our conflicts. I think you're right. I agree. Well, I think you're right about the fact that globalism, whatever it is you want to call it, has certainly had a positive impact in many ways, but it's also had a negative impact. I think we agree on that. But do you think that the media has done a good job of explaining to people that it's a trade-off? Like some of these things that we consider to be horrible, the jobs going overseas, which I agree I hate, that there are upsides as well? Or do you think that media, whether that be left-wing media or right-wing media, picks its side and only pushes what they consider to be their agenda? I mean, are people being fair on the right when they talk about the benefits of globalization? Do they leave out the downsides? Do they leave out the upsides? I mean, how much responsibility does media have when it comes to us, you and I, having this conversation and recognizing, there's some good things about it, but there are also some bad things about it, and we have to figure out the balance. That's what you do in your life, right? It's what I try to do in my life. But we don't do that in the public sphere at all. People choose a side and they scream about losing jobs overseas and completely leave out the benefits, or vice versa.
Right. No, it is really hard. And I think it should be the media's job to kind of play referee or moderator for having this conversation, for weighing the pros and cons. But you're right, it doesn't happen. And that is frustrating. And one of the examples that I want to use that's kind of always in the news and almost never portrayed fairly is the issue of immigration. Immigration and globalization, globalism kind of go hand in hand, but it's very, very hard to get an honest conversation about immigration. I'm someone who is criticized from the left because I think mass migration is it does have a lot of challenges that I think places like Canada are especially starting to feel right now. And I've also criticized on the right, especially for people who are more farther right, because I'm not totally against immigration. I am in favor of a skills-based, merit-based immigration system like in the past Canada used to have, and like Australia currently does have. When immigrants, like anything else, aren't all the same, and it's absolutely a question of let's look at the things from an individual basis, weigh pros and cons. From the media, all we ever hear is about illegal immigration, this, illegal immigration, that. It's like, okay, well, what about non-illegal immigration, right? Can we have a conversation about that? Because it's not just all about the border wall. There are people who have doctorates who aren't able to come over to the US for whatever reason. Meanwhile, everyone is concerned about this one specific facet of it. So that is very, very frustrating. And I think the media, the political establishment have absolutely dropped the ball. I don't even want to say drop the ball because that makes it sound unintentional. I think there's a lot of perhaps even willful obfuscation of the issue, which is why, people who are in independent media almost have a bigger responsibility because they need to talk about the things that no one else is talking about.
But aren't they talking about some things that no one else is talking about? Sometimes there's a reason the other folks aren't talking about it. I mean, I hear when you said that immediately, I've heard that argument in the past, and I think about family members, friends of mine, acquaintances of mine, neighbors of mine who say, well, I listen to such and such, or I watch such and such because the other people don't tell the whole story. They don't tell the truth. They don't give you all the facts. But then when I find out that what they're listening to is some network or reading some blog or website that's talking about fraud in the election or how the election was stolen, I think sometimes to myself, well, there's a reason that that's not being talked about anywhere else. And it's because there's not been evidence of it. Like, are some independent media outlets, and I'm not saying that just happens on the right. There are things that I believe that are parallel on the left as well. But are some independent media outlets going a little too far with this whole, well, we'll tell you the truth that no one else will tell you? And the reality is that it's not really the truth. Are these election fraud claims? Are they fake news? Well,
I think when it comes to, let's say specifically election fraud stuff, I think it's wrong to say that there's no evidence, right? The question is there widespread evidence? Voter fraud is unfortunately something that does happen, but the question is it enough? Has there been enough of it to actually change election results, which is a different thing. In terms of what is and what is not worthy, I guess, of being reported, I think that should be up to each and every single individual to decide for themselves. I don't like the idea, and I get what you mean, right? I've had people suggest stories to me, and I'm like, okay, well, no one cares about that. But I think it is important that at least someone out there might be able to talk about it. When it comes to things like the election, I do think that it is important that we have people who aren't just part of the same media establishment that is owned by these same conglomerates and rooting for the political establishment, whether that's on the left or the right, who's controlling the narrative and what people are aware of in terms of reporting.
Right, fair, but aren't there some things that are we splitting hairs when we talk about there's no evidence of election fraud versus there's no evidence of widespread election fraud versus there's evidence of a lot of election fraud, but not enough to change the outcome? I mean, the goalpost seems to be moving a little bit, doesn't it? I mean, we've always known that. I think most people will admit that certainly there have been historically instances of some people trying to vote the wrong way or vote illegally. But historically, those situations have been not widespread, but they've been very specific and they've been stopped. And that's the reason we know about them, because somebody stopped them. But what I'm talking about is some of the stories that people might hear on OANN or Newsmax or one of those places that's trying to come up right now that the president listens to, where you're hearing Sidney Powell talk about, the president should take, or Michael Flynn, the president should declare martial law in order to get rid of some of this, to take the ballot boxes. And I understand what you're saying about people should make the decision for themselves. But if you only listen to one thing, you're not going to, I mean, people aren't going to fact check the news that they have chosen to watch, right? I mean, in order to make that independent decision, you've got to be someone who's curious enough to go and Google it. Do you think people are really curious enough to go and fact check the people who they think are their fact checkers?
Well, no, I actually don't think that way. I don't think that is
scary.
The case. I think, but that's the downside of democracy that we all have to live with, right? We are in a system of government where we've invested a lot of power, instilled a lot of power in people who aren't professional politicians. Well, thank goodness on that count, but who live their everyday lives, probably only minimally interested in politics, but they are ultimately the ones who have all the political power. So no, I don't think that the average person is going to take the time to make sure they're hearing a well-balanced amount of news from different sources and look up primary sources. But the only other option in that case would be to try and have like this top-down control of media narrative, which I think is even worse. I think the problem you're talking about is people
that the only other option?
Well,
is there not a middle ground somewhere? I mean, I agree. Top-down control of the media narrative would be worse for sure. But is there not some sort of middle ground? Is there a way to, I don't know the answer here. I'm literally asking you. Is there a way to define news better? I mean, can we just say news must be accurate?
Well, because that's what places like Facebook and Twitter are trying to do. But even we see that, just the idea of saying what is and what is not accurate, a lot of the times that is subject to opinion, unfortunately, because situations aren't always cut and dry. We've seen people like on Twitter try to post factual things, like with the Hunter Biden story, for example, and have been censored for allegedly spreading disinformation. Even if
but where do they get the facts from? I mean, the factual, what, so I guess, but my question is, what defines a fact? I mean, the sky is blue is a fact. True or false?
Yeah, that's
I mean, there
true.
are, so we know that there are some things that are demonstrably factual.
You might say, actually, the sky is black and it only looks blue because of whatever scientific thing. And I don't want there to be the equivalent of a ministry of truth who is in charge of deciding that. I think that is a scary thing to happen, because what might look like an open and shut case, a lot of the times might not be. And I just don't want someone, in Facebook or YouTube or heck, even the government, with the ability to say what is and what is not the case.
Do people, I hear what you're saying. I mean, I even heard what you said about the scientist thing. And part of me wanted to roll my eyes. Hell, I might have done it, but that's radio, so no one can tell. But the truth is, I understand what you're saying. Yes, there are always ways to nitpick certain things, and grass is a construct. It's not green. It's right. So I'm with you on that. But I guess what I wonder is, like, the arguments, those types of arguments that, people should be allowed to say whatever they want to say, seem to be popular as long as your side, or I'm not saying you, Lauren, but as long as that my side happens to be winning right now, or happens to be having success in that way. And as soon as my side starts losing, then it's gerrymandering. It's voter fraud. The election was fraudulent. I was one of the first people to say, listen, we've got to stop with the damn voter fraud arguments in 2016, because I thought, listen, it sucks. Stop with the arguments about the Electoral College. We knew the rules going in. We didn't play the game correctly. Hillary did not go to Wisconsin like she should have, etc. Yeah. Stop that shit. But in the moments, in the months following 2016's election, there were lots of calls for why the Electoral College is horrible, and why the vote was stolen, or why certain people weren't able to get to the ballot box, blah, blah, blah. And I was one of the first to say, listen, this is not, we can't be making these arguments. But that was fine. Freedom of speech was acceptable to folks on the left at the time. And making these accusations was acceptable because they were somewhat effective. They had a large group of people who said them with them. Rachel Maddow was agreeing, Chris Hayes was agreeing, etc. Well, now progressives hate the OANNs of the world and the what's the other one? Newsmaxes of the world, because they're saying things that I don't believe are accurate or fair. But folks who are on the right, I'm not putting you into that OAN Newsmax category necessarily, but make some of the arguments that you're making. It's okay. Freedom of speech. Like, I don't think it's right either time, is my point. I don't think it's acceptable either time to make accusations based on the fact that I didn't win. I have lost a few things in my life on a national stage, and I have never said the process was rigged against me. I didn't claim that people couldn't get through but Rubin's lines were open. I didn't claim that. I don't care. Like, don't we just make these arguments and justify how right we are when we're winning?
Well, I think there's a good point to be made from that. And, if there was no hypocrisy in politics, there wouldn't be much of anything going on. But I guess my question for you would be, what does it mean for something to be unacceptable? If you think it's unacceptable for, people to now start saying, oh, well, the game was rigged when they've lost, does that mean that you get to criticize them for it? Or does that mean that their posts need to be taken down for it? Right? Because both would kind of lead to the fact, or speak to the fact, that you think they're unacceptable, but one is a lot more heavy-handed than the other. And I definitely didn't support, and I didn't see anyone when the whole Russiagate thing was the topic of the day, saying that people like Rachel Maddow should be removed from the airwaves for spreading disinformation and conspiracy theorists. And if that had happened, I wouldn't have supported it. And
do you think there is a higher expectation for anyone? I mean, if I posted or you posted something on Twitter that was completely factually inaccurate, I don't know that I would get tagged as fake information, because I don't think enough people follow me. You have more followers than I do, but so you might. But some of us don't necessarily draw the attention of the Twitters, the Twitter bots, or whoever it is that's making these decisions, because some of us are, is there a good reason behind that? I mean, the fact that maybe I could put up "the sky is purple" and they wouldn't pull it down, but if Boris Johnson put up "the sky is purple," they might
I think you're absolutely right. There is a big inequality when it comes to enforcement of things like terms of service agreements, and when it comes to like spreading fake news, or even when it comes to something like harassment, which we've seen also be a pretty big issue. And I think that is one of the major flaws inherent of trying to vest so much on these moderation techniques.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with it. I'm actually saying my point was not to say that it's okay my point was actually to say that, but shouldn't some people be held to a higher standard? I mean, if I wouldn't get it, I would not have my tweets criticized or labeled as false today. But had I won my congressional race, and if I were a sitting member of Congress, I would expect that they would hold me to a higher standard. Is that not fair? That if I have put myself in that position, that I should be held to a higher standard?
I mean, I absolutely think that congressmen should be held to a higher standard when it comes to commenting on the news than, your average Twitter egg, but that doesn't necessarily mean be held to a higher standard by Twitter. Because again, I don't trust Twitter's standards. I think they've been. But
that's why you went to Parler then, right?
Right.
I mean, I guess my point is, Twitter isn't the government, right? It's a private company. They own the bulletin board.
Yeah, they are free to do that. And, what my response has been always consistently when it comes to this issue is like, all right, Twitter, you can curate feeds however you want. You can shadow ban. You can, prevent one of the oldest newspapers in the nation from posting news, the New York Post. You can do that. But I think if you do that, you are no longer a platform, and it is unfair legally for you to claim to be such. And as such, I think you should lose any protections that you have under Section 230. I mean, like I said, they can do what they want. They're a private company, but if they act that way, they should be liable as any other private company is.
Right. So if they own a bulletin board and they're only letting certain things be on their bulletin board, then you're saying that that's fine. But what exactly? Help me understand what it is that you feel they're protected from. All
right. So the issue with Section 230, which is kind of what places like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter have really been shielded by is that it makes a distinguish between publishers and platforms. So essentially, the law says that if a site like Twitter or Facebook is just a platform, i.e., it's a bulletin board, people come and post whatever they want on it, then Twitter, Facebook, YouTube should not be liable for what people post on it. So, for example, if I post a copyrighted version of your song on my YouTube page and you sue me for copyright infringement, you're suing me. You're not suing YouTube, right? Because, hey, YouTube is just what? So that's not me.
A bulletin board, right? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And I think that's fair. I think that is definitely fair. These individual users, it's not Twitter's problem. It's not YouTube's problem. But however, there is a little bit of a caveat there, because you do have sites like, let's say, the Washington Post, where if one of their editors posts something defamatory, the Washington Post themselves can be sued for that. So what's the difference there? It's the difference between being a publisher and a platform. So a platform is a place where anyone can say whatever, their users. It's not YouTube isn't like kind of favoring anybody. It's almost like the Wild West. A publisher is someone who actually takes editorial control and has editorial discretion. That way, there's enough involvement from the publisher to where it speaks to the fact that, if this is present on the site, it's actually because the publisher wanted it there. Like the Washington Post, if an article or an op-ed gets posted, it's because the Washington Post wants it there, right?
I'm following you.
So,
yep.
For the longest time, the defense of YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, of why they shouldn't be sued or held liable for whatever is posted onto their site. And that includes things like, unfortunately, revenge pornography or copyrighted material or whatever, is because, hey, we're just a publisher. But the thing is, as places like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube have taken more and more involvement in what is posted on their site, they've begun to editorialize feeds. They now lift up authoritative sources. They shadow ban things. They put disclaimers on stuff. They are gradually just becoming publishers, or at the very least, that line is becoming blurred because they are editorializing. I think this is a lot more true when it comes to YouTube than somewhere like Facebook.
So let me ask you this. So if I own a bulletin board, because your argument on its face makes some sense. I mean, I'm sitting here listening to you and thinking, okay, I'm following you. We're getting there. Yeah. But then I think to myself, but wait a second. If I have a bulletin board, and I let you post whatever you want to up there, but then you walk up and you tack up a picture of your ex naked, and it's for revenge porn, for example. And I take that down because I say, listen, you can post everything you want, anything you want up here, except there are certain rules still. You can't put up something that is offensive or it's personal, that attacks somebody else. You can't put up their personal information, etc. That doesn't necessarily make me an editor, does it? That doesn't make me a publisher. It doesn't necessarily make me responsible for that content, as long as I am making sure that not only are you not allowed to post pictures of naked people, no one is allowed to post pictures of naked people, right?
You're absolutely right there. And that is an important distinction. And Section 230 does allow for sites to have some terms of service, right? So it's not like you said, it's not being a publisher and editor for Facebook to say, hang on, do not post this nasty photo of your ex. This goes against our terms of service. And I've not seen anyone try to claim that in doing so, Twitter or Facebook should lose that protections. The executive order that the Trump administration actually put out to clarify Section 230 makes it very clear what actions a platform would need to take in order to be viewed as a publisher. And most of it goes to editorial choices. So one of the biggest tells that was mentioned there is that are they treating content differently based on who it's published by or who it's posted by.
But are they? Because you mentioned the New York Post, and I can open Twitter right now and find dozens of articles from the New York Post that are not posted or that are not
now
flagged, that's always been the case. There have been New York Post.
That wasn't the case leading up to the election. The New York Post was banned from posting on their Twitter account after they broke the Hunter Biden story.
they were banned from posting completely about the or boasting about the Hunter Biden thing. But their terms,
they were banned from posting completely.
But part of the terms of service do say, I mean, listen, I'm actually kind of trying to find agreement because I think the social media has been somewhat destructive. So I'm looking for ways to find agreement, but I can't hear because the terms of service do say that if you break a rule or if you continue to have violations and post things that are factually inaccurate, etc., then we can ban your account for a certain period of time. We can suspend it.
Inaccurate about the
well, I don't have that. I don't have that information in front of me. But the argument would then be if they banned the New York Post for something that was factually inaccurate, and the New York Post says, no, it wasn't factually inaccurate, then the New York Post has the same sorts of protections that I would have. They can sue Twitter for violating their own terms of service, and courts can.
There has never been a
no. I'm not saying suing them as a platform, but suing them for violating their own terms of service. And if Twitter's terms of service say you can be banned if you post something factually inaccurate, and then they ban the New York Post because they believe something was factually inaccurate, then the New York Post just has to say, wait a second, prove that it's factually inaccurate. You can't. It's not factually inaccurate. Therefore, you violated your terms of service. I mean, who is the onus on?
I completely agree that they should be able to do that. I think if individuals were able to take their cases against that, I would support that. But we have not had a case of a court actually saying that public platforms should be as bound to their terms of service as the users. That has not happened, which is very, very frustrating. We've seen people like, I think, Devin Nunes and PragerU tried to do that, but they have not been successful. But see, are
they not successful because the courts found that no, Twitter didn't violate its terms of service? Because that's what happened with Devin. No, that's what happened with Devin Nunes. They was found that Twitter did not violate their terms of service. Not that Twitter was not liable, but simply that they didn't violate their terms of service.
Well, Twitter's terms of service, that's the thing. Like, Twitter's terms of service does not promise its users that we will protect your posts unless this, this, and this, right? That's not how their terms of service are written. And I think it's very, very intentional. But I'm someone who I'm not a libertarian. I don't think corporations should be able to do whatever they want. I believe in consumer protections to a point. I don't think it's okay for a restaurant or a food manufacturer to completely poison their customers. I think customers should have the right of redress. And I think the same should absolutely be true when it comes to big tech. I think individual users who have been wronged, who've had their channels deleted or whatever, should have the right of redress for these big platforms. And I think the only reason why consumer protection laws have not extended to big tech is because of, frankly, lobbying.
Is there not an argument that when you go to court, you must be able to show damages, right? And so if Twitter is free to me, if I don't pay for Twitter, and when I don't pay for Twitter, there are no damages if they don't let me use it, right? So isn't that the reason? I mean, if I spill, what are the damages? How do you quantify the damages of not being able to use the platform?
Well, I wouldn't say not being able to use the platform specifically, although, there are people who are actually social media influencers whose entire presence is based on social media. But let's look at the issue of Nick Sandman, who was the Covington Catholic kid.
Right.
He was defamed on social media and by places like CNN, and them posting that type of stuff on social media. It actually, I think, absolutely quantifiably.
Did he sue CNN?
Yes, he did.
And how did that go?
They ended up settling out of court.
Okay, so essentially he won against CNN. Did he sue Twitter?
No, he did not sue Twitter.
Right, but that's because Twitter because CNN's the one who defamed him, right? But if I defame you on Twitter,
he should have been able to sue Twitter because there are people like Reza Aslan who are calling his face punchable, which, I mean, people have been banned off Twitter for less, and that was allowed to remain up. I think he should have been able to sue Twitter for that.
But why not Reza Aslan? He's the one who said something.
Sue them all. Heck,
I guess I get really confused because it seems like what we want as a society, not just you, although you're saying it here, what we want as a society is for Twitter to take down everything that offends us, but let us say anything we want to. Like, it sounds like
I'm not asking for that. I want Twitter to enforce rules evenly. That's all.
But they're only not enforced evenly if you don't feel like they agreed with you on what was offensive. I'm not saying you personally, the global you, all of us. We only feel like they're not enforced evenly if Twitter happened to not agree with us on what is. Let me tell you what I'll do it right now just for fun. I used to find, I'm not nearly as well known anymore, so it doesn't happen as often. But I used to be able to go in just for fun, search my name on Twitter, and the five first things that pop up would be the nastiest shit you've ever heard in your life. I'm actually lucky today because for the past few days they've mostly been nice. It's Christmas. Christmas is my good season. But usually I can open it up and just have the nastiest things said about me. You know why there are no damages there when nasty things are said about me? Because I don't give a shit, you know? So Reza Aslan, so Reza Aslan saying that somebody has a punchable face, there are no damages there unless you choose. The things that have been said nasty about me on Twitter.
That's how civil court works, right? So if someone defames
Shouldn't it be? Shouldn't it be?
Well, I think there's you're kind of undermining the whole issue of like libel cases and defamation cases. For example, if I am,
maybe they need to be undermined, but okay, keep going.
Let's say I'm an author and, I had this great career, but all of a sudden someone on Twitter says that I am trans hating or something like that. I'm thinking of J.K. Rowling right now. That story going viral actually can have a measurable impact and damages on potential future sales. So now we're talking about where damages are actually quantifiable in terms of dollars. And people have been taken to court for things like that, for defamation. Was it Majid Nawaz? He won a huge settlement from the Southern Poverty Law Center, who wrongly labeled him as an anti-Muslim extremist and things like that. So I mean, it's already established that we can take people to court for things that they say.
But nobody has taken. But J.K. Rowling has not been able to take anybody to court because the person who said she was trans hating has the right to have an opinion. That's not a factual statement necessarily. Saying that she is trans hating is not necessarily a factual statement. The Southern Poverty Law Center, on the other hand, is an organization that has the reputation of and has positioned itself and as a group that has a definitive list of people who are terrorists or who are hate groups, etc.
Yeah, I mean the like I said, opinion.
But I'm explaining why there's a difference. There's a reason you can win that lawsuit against the Southern Poverty Law Center because they have positioned themselves as an authority.
Their position. It's about what they are claiming someone else has or has not done. So I'm
right. But if I claim that you are a terrorist, he's not. You can't win a suit against me about that simply because I don't have any authority to tell you a terrorist. I said Lauren Chen's a terrorist. Lauren Chen's a terrorist.
That doesn't have defamation. I mean, it's not necessarily the amount that I might be entitled to would obviously be impacted from the notoriety or amount of damage that is caused. But I could, that doesn't change its legality in terms of civil law on its face. It would still be illegal for
No, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be illegal for me to say that if it is an opinion. It is my opinion. It is my opinion that Lauren
terrorist, saying that someone is a terrorist is that's a lot different than saying that someone is a bigot, right? So I think there might be
it's only different if I say that I have factual evidence proving this was an act that you performed. What does terrorist mean, Lauren? Terrorist could simply mean terrorist could
definition of terrorism, right? Terrorism is there are actually laws surrounding this.
But what are those definitions? I think that's been a problem. We're going down this crazy rabbit hole, which they're going to kill me for in a minute, but I'm enjoying it, so I'm gonna keep it going. Their terrorism hasn't been very well defined, period, and that's one of the reasons that we have this global war on terrorism, and we don't even know what the hell it is that we're fighting. But my point is, it is an opinion. If I say that you are again, obviously, I wouldn't be having this discussion with you if I thought that you were an idiot. But if I say that you're an idiot, that's an opinion. It's not factual, right? If I manufacture some sort of IQ score and say that, look, I have this IQ score of Lauren Chen and it's only 71, then we've got a libel case on our hand, because that is a blatant lie. It's not an opinion. I'm trying to use fact. You see that? I mean, that's the difference that I am getting texted by the producers like, stop this, stop.
I think when it comes to terrorism specifically, though, like, there is a definition of terrorism. Looking at, like, in Canada criminal code, it does define terrorism.
Well, honey, we ain't in Canada right here in my house. We're in America, and we don't have the same libel laws.
I'm sure there's one in the U.S. as well, but there's no criminal definition of, let's say, transphobia or something. So that, I think, is why, J.K. Rowling isn't able to do anything, whereas Majid Nawaz, I forget exactly what the charge is, but they were definitely saying, like, factually inaccurate things about him. And, the same we just saw with Johnny Depp. He had this whole thing, this whole suit against the Sun for defamation because they called him a wife beater. And a lot of people were wondering why that suit against the Sun ended up devolving into this almost prying look into his and Amber Heard's relationship. It's because, well, if it's defamation, it needs to not be true. But in order to settle the defamation case, the judge kind of needs to see, well, are you actually a wife beater? And it turns out that in this judge's opinion, yeah, there's enough evidence there that the Sun can say that, and it's not. Well,
the Sun, and the libel laws in England are completely different than the ones here, also. So that's a hard. My point is, should we not maybe take a re-look at what we consider what we're getting offended by? I mean, I could go down, not to put you on the spot, and I know I'm going to change to our quickfire round because listeners did actually send in a lot of questions for you. But if you go through anybody's Twitter feed who's in the public eye, you'll find instances where they have said things on Twitter that Twitter is like where you go to say the first thing that comes to your mind before you think, Twitter. Yeah. And like, we know that no one thinks things through very carefully and thinks, okay, let me have a logical discussion on Twitter. And I think in some ways that's kind of how they've guarded themselves. Jack Dorsey has built a format and built a brand where we know nobody really thinks through what they say on Twitter. Twitter is just for people to say the first thing that comes to their mind, and then he doesn't even let you edit it. You know what I mean? You have to delete it. So this is not a platform where people are saying things that they have thought through with their attorneys. So should we not maybe take a look at the fact that maybe we're all getting offended a little too quickly? And I know a lot of the stuff that you've talked about is cancel culture related, and I'd love to have you back, and I hope we do have you back again to talk maybe more about that type of stuff too. But it seems to me, as we have this conversation, and it's not unlike a conversation that I have with anybody on this program all year long, which is that, certain things are horribly offensive and they must have a stop put to them. But other things are freedom of speech. The things that I say and I believe, that's freedom of speech. I should be allowed to say that. And the things that other people say are horribly offensive and they should not be, they should be taken down. They shouldn't be allowed.
I agree with you. And that's why, the whole reason why I bring up this Section 230 thing, it's not to encourage social media censorship against stuff that I don't like. It's to say, hey, if you don't want to have this happen, Twitter, if you don't want to have every other person suing you over something someone else said about them, then just ease up. Right? Embrace the status of platform. That's what I want. I want to return to let's not sue everyone over something they said about the other person online. I would like that. So the reason why I and a lot of other people bring this up and want like the hammer to fall on Twitter, on YouTube, and Facebook for all of these things, it's not so that we can live in a world where censorship is dialed up. It's so we can live in a world where it's dialed back. Right. And so it's just wanting them to feel the consequences of their actions over what they've been doing, that I think it's a good idea. It's not, I want Section 230 to stay, because I don't think it's a good idea to have someone like Facebook liable for whoever posts on it. But what's frustrating is the double standard.
I'll let you have the last word on that, because otherwise I might get fired. A quick fire round. I've totally loved this. To be honest with you, we wanted to have you on because you were on our very first show of
Remember
how
when
the
we
heck are
could
we
like sit next to each other? That was fun.
No, I don't. but I believe you. I've heard stories about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were on our very first show. We only made it through 2 in person before we ended up coming here into quarantine, and I've been in my office in my house for the past year doing these episodes. We wanted to have you back on to kind of recount the year, but this conversation ended up being so much more fun to me because 2020, let's be honest, it was sort of boring. Nothing really happened. Quick fire questions. We ask listeners to send in questions. You can do that as well. Politicon, at Politicon on Instagram or Twitter. God forbid we send anything on Twitter there. At Politicon on Instagram or Twitter, or you can email to podcasts@politicon.com. Quite a few brought in for Lauren this week, but I'm going to start with Mitch from Stockton, California, since it's sort of adjacent to what we were talking about. Mitch from Stockton, California asks, why do people still believe the mainstream media?
I think a lot of the time it might be confirmation bias. Honestly, I love believing that I'm right 100% of the time, even though it might only be like 95% of the time. So I think confirmation bias plays a big part of it. And I think the other part might just be it's comfortable, right? It's easier. The mainstream media, it's everywhere. It's accessible. They've really done a good job of branding themselves as the official authorities on things like that. So it's easier to just go along with it. And I think a lot of the people who aren't, politicos like you and I, who really keep up with this stuff, they might not be aware that there even is this huge movement to question or challenge what official sources might be saying. So I think there are a lot of people who might just trust them because, hey, it's the news, and historically, why wouldn't you trust the news?
Listen, I don't disagree. I'm not supposed to interject, but I'm having fun with you, Lauren. So I'm going to interject anyway during the quickfire round. Is it possible that confirmation bias is also the reason that Fox News and the right-wing media outlets are successful? I mean, if it's good for the goose, isn't it good for the gander?
I consider Fox News part of mainstream media. Like, don't get me wrong.
Well, then isn't it possible that confirmation bias may be why The Blaze has been successful, or maybe why OANN?
I would say any media outlet for sure.
Okay. Amanda from Phoenix, Arizona says, it feels like there are no more libertarian places left. Is the USA the last best hope?
Yes, I would say definitely.
Really?
Like I said, I'm small government. I'm not libertarian though.
Okay.
But I see eye to eye with libertarians about a lot of things. And I think if we look at like actual social policies, the U.S. is pretty good. But in terms of like economic libertarianism, U.S. actually isn't, ranked highest for ease of doing business. Other places, like for example, Hong Kong, rank a lot higher. So even the U.S., I think if you're someone who loves liberty, you've got a lot to think about and question.
Let me tell you what, Lauren, your fans love you because this week they have come in. I'm seeing so many more red state questions this week than we normally do, admittedly. Rachel from Boise, Idaho. Oh, sorry about that, Rachel. Sorry about that, Idaho. Rachel from Boise, Idaho asks, did the swamp defeat Donald Trump?
I think the swamp defeated all of the populace, the people who were trying to fight back. I think, and what's funny about the swamp is that I've been enjoying seeing AOC. I'm not a fan of her, but I've been enjoying seeing her try to fight back against it as well. And I think, Washington, it's a muddy place, a swampy place. And I don't think anyone who believes in the corruption of that area is surprised to see how things have played out.
Taylor from Seattle, Washington asks, man, today I've got COVID mouth. I can't talk at all. Taylor from Seattle, Washington asks, should Russian and Chinese interference be treated differently?
Treated differently than what, I suppose? But look, I'm
from each other.
From each other. No, I don't think so. I think any election interference needs to be examined and called out, whether that's domestic, whether that's international. What's interesting is that globally speaking, the U.S. does not have very secure elections. In Canada, we perform our elections very differently. We don't use electronic counters. We don't have widespread mail-in ballots. We require voter ID. And I'm someone who thinks that democracy is only as good as the efforts that are made to uphold the integrity of the election. So, call them out, condemn it, regardless of who it's coming from. And, this goes for, there were Democrats recently saying that Mitch McConnell's reelection was suspect. fine, have an investigation. I'm someone who says like either way, even if it doesn't benefit the person I want to win, what's most important is the integrity of the vote.
Just to uphold the integrity of Taylor's question, in case he was talking about non-election interference, we've seen that there was some Russian hacking, quite a bit of Russian hacking into email systems and internet systems over the past few weeks. That's been revealed in DC, several executive departments, but very little discussion about that from the executive branch. Has there been enough of a reaction, a strong enough reaction to Russia's hacking of the computer systems?
I mean, I think when it comes to that type of thing, I'm not a neoconservative. I know there are people out there who's like, all right, let's get boots on the ground and things like that, which I don't think is the right thing to do. I would say I think the right thing to do there would be to be very upfront with the evidence that you have as to who is and who is not responsible. But I'm very tit for tat when it comes to international relations. And I think that if this type of interference bothers Americans, and this is kind of like where my non-American side comes out, they should also keep that in mind the next time other countries are saying, please don't interfere with our elections or with our way of life and things like that.
And last one we'll do from the quickfire. Scotty from LA asks, it's very depressing. Is our politics doomed to end in street battles between Proud Boys and Antifa? Ooh, you may not have, you don't have to answer that one directly. Sorry, Scotty, but is it possible for things to get better, or are we just headed down a spiral that's going to be difficult to get out of?
Honestly, I'm going to have to be a little bit pessimistic here. I'm not sure if things are going to be any more unified in the future, right? We've seen Biden, and I will say to his credit, he personally has tried to bring a unifying message, which I think is the right thing to do. He's saying, I'm your president now. Let's come together. I appreciate that. But I think there are a lot of people out there who don't want that to happen. And I think, even after this election, we've still seen these skirmishes happen. We've still seen political violence happen. I don't think it's going to be as easy as, well, we can just dial down the rhetoric and everything will be okay. We are living in a time where there are people in the same country who have fundamentally opposing visions of A, what is happening, and B, what needs to happen in the future. And I'm not sure. Like, I'm hoping that, this is just me as someone who watches way too much news. And of course, the news tends to focus on the negative. I'm hoping that's just my confirmation bias speaking there. But I'm not sure. I hope to be.
Would we watch news that was only good news, though? I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Haven't we learned that? I mean, I wish we would, but I think the news networks have all learned that if they just tell us the positive, no one tunes in, right?
Yeah, it's not interesting. I want the drama. I want the conflict. Unfortunately,
that is very disappointing. I can't thank you enough for coming back on and wrapping out 2020. You're our last live episode of the year. Next week, we are going to have a special episode for all of you who are listening to sort of bring some of the highlights of 2020 to you. And I'm kind of excited about showing the progress we've made from that first episode that we had with Lauren, our first ever live episode, to our last live episode of 2020 with Lauren. I can't thank you enough for doing both of them with us. I got to ask you before we leave, in 2021, how the heck are we going to get along?
Gosh, I think the main way we can get along is by hoping that we can at least see each other. That would be nice. I feel like we've all gotten a little bit meaner maybe in quarantine because we're not going anywhere. We're on our laptops for too long. We haven't been with our friends and family. So I think that the first thing needs to be like, let's just get through this. Let's get to a point where we can hug each other once more. And then I think that'll make any reunification or
maybe that's all we needed. Maybe we just needed to see how much worse it could get so that we would all want to get along a little bit better. Well,
I was like, man, I still don't like you, but I miss seeing your face.
Right. Exactly. Maybe that's all it took. Maybe that's what it took. Lauren, I can't tell you how much of a pleasure it has been to talk with you again. And I wish you, and I know we all wish all of us, a very happy holiday and an incredible 2021. So please come back and talk with us in 2021 and maybe we'll find some peace next year.
Yeah, here's hoping. And thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure. And I hope you all have a great holiday too.
Lauren Chen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll be back next week with a very special episode, which we're all very excited about. A look back at how the heck are we going to get along over our very first calendar year of episodes. Some really exciting moments, some funny moments, some explosive moments, some very, very thoughtful moments. It's been a real pleasure and a real treat to be able to talk to some really incredible minds and thinkers and leaders over this past year. It's been a blessing for me. I wish everyone a wonderful holiday, and I'll be back here to guide you through next week's episode a little bit. And I will see you then on How the Heck Are We Going to Get Along?